Blood streamed down Isaiah Johnson's face as he crawled across the frozen ground, pulling his 7-year-old daughter by her arm. Little Zara could barely walk. Her face was swollen from crying, a deep cut on her forehead still bleeding under the merciless 10-degree Fahrenheit winter of rural Montana. They staggered down the deserted road without warm clothes, without a phone, without hope. "Please, someone help," Isaiah whispered, his voice breaking as tears froze on his cheeks. 20 minutes earlier, he had been at the Whitfield estate where he had lived since his wife Rebecca died in a skiing accident 6 months ago. Now his few possessions were scattered across the snow-covered road, thrown out of the car that had brought him there, and abandoned without remorse. "You were never good enough for our daughter," were Margaret Whitfield's last words before her driver sped away, leaving them in the biting cold that threatened to claim their lives within hours. Isaiah Johnson, 34, a respected music teacher with a master's degree in composition, never imagined his life would end like this. Beaten and abandoned in the middle of nowhere by the in-laws who once promised to protect him after Rebecca's death. What he didn't know was that they never truly accepted him. A black son-in-law had never been part of the prestigious white Whitfield family plan, despite their public image of progressive inclusivity. "Daddy, I'm cold," Zara whispered, her lips turning blue from the freezing temperature. Isaiah held his daughter close, knowing that without help, hypothermia would claim them both within hours. The road had been deserted since the snowstorm began. In the distance, the wind formed swirling patterns of snow, creating the cruel illusion of approaching headlights where there was only more suffering. "Everything will be all right, sweetheart," he lied, feeling the numbness already creeping into his extremities. In his mind, flashes of the last few months took shape. The small changes in his in-laws' behavior after reading the will, the locks changed without warning, the documents that needed to be signed urgently, the growing determination to get custody of Zara, the argument that morning when Isaiah discovered they were planning to send him back to his kind while keeping his daughter. The sound of an engine broke the deadly silence. Isaiah turned with difficulty, raising his hand to shield his eyes from the blinding snow. A white Range Rover approached, slowing down. He hesitated. Asking strangers for help could be just as dangerous, but Zara's condition left him no choice. The vehicle stopped a few yards away. A tall woman with fair skin and platinum blonde hair got out. She was dressed in an elegant wool coat and boots. Despite the luxury car, her blue eyes scanned the scene with an unreadable expression. "You need help," she said. It wasn't a question. Isaiah nodded, pressing Zara protectively against him. "My name is Alexandra Sinclair. I have blankets and a first aid kit." Isaiah studied her face, looking for signs of danger. In the 3 years he had lived in Montana after marrying into the Whitfield family, he had learned that not everyone viewed a black man married to a white woman with sympathy, especially one in a vulnerable situation. "Please," he finally said, "my daughter needs help." Alexandra approached slowly, as one might approach a wounded animal, and offered a thermal blanket. "I won't touch you without permission, but that cut on the girl's head needs stitches, and you both have early signs of hypothermia." When Isaiah accepted the blanket with trembling hands, he noticed something in Alexandra's gaze, not pity, not judgment, but a silent acknowledgement, as if she too knew what it was like to be alone in the most desperate moment. On the horizon, the Whitfield estate was still a distant silhouette against the gray sky. From one of the windows, Margaret Whitfield watched through binoculars, her face a mask of calculated coldness. "They must be dead by now," said Robert Whitfield, her husband, pouring himself a brandy. "No one drives that road during a snowstorm." What neither of them realized was that this encounter on the side of the road wasn't the end of Isaiah and Zara's story. It was only the beginning. And when the snow finally settled, nothing in the Whitfields' lives would remain intact. At Bozeman Memorial Hospital, Isaiah watched Zara sleep, her small forehead wrapped in bandages. His own injuries seemed insignificant compared to the relief of seeing his daughter breathing peacefully. "Mr. Johnson," Dr. Ramirez entered quietly. "Zara's tests are good. The concussion isn't as serious as we feared." A woman in an impeccable suit burst into the room, followed by 2 police officers. "Victoria Palmer, attorney for the Whitfield family. I'm here to discuss the situation of the minor Zara Whitfield." Johnson, Isaiah corrected her. My daughter's last name is Johnson, actually. I have a preliminary petition for custody. The Whitfields allege gross negligence. According to them, you fled the residence after an argument over the inheritance, putting Zara in danger. Gentlemen, Alexandra Sinclair's voice cut through the tension. This man and his daughter are under medical care. Any legal matters can wait 48 hours, as stipulated by Montana law. When everyone left, Isaiah stared at Alexandra. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. 15 years ago, no one stopped to help my brother. He and my niece died on a road similar to this one during a blizzard. She paused. As for the Whitfields, Robert tried to block my renewable energy project when I refused to sell my patents to his company. 3 days later, in the modern office of Jackson Rivera, the lawyer Alexandra had hired, Isaiah listened in disbelief to the Whitfields' accusations. They claim emotional instability and that you tried to extort money from the family. Jackson, a 45-year-old Latino man with salt and pepper hair, spoke bluntly. They also say you stole family heirlooms and fabricated a narrative of victimization. How can they twist it around like that? Because they have money and influence. The Whitfields control half the businesses in this county. The question is, what do you have against them? Isaiah opened his messenger bag and took out a voice recorder. I've noticed strange things over the last few weeks. Documents about Zara's custody appearing for urgent signature, my bank accounts being frozen. I started recording our interactions after the housekeeper warned me about their plans. Jackson plugged in the device, and Margaret Whitfield's cold voice filled the room. Rebecca should never have married him, a black music teacher with no social standing. But now we're going to fix that mistake. That girl has Whitfield blood, and she won't grow up with him. Jackson's eyes widened as he listened to explicit conversations about getting rid of Isaiah, falsifying psychological evaluations, and Robert instructing his driver to drop them off, where the cold will take care of our problem. This changes everything, Jackson said. But we need more. They'll claim illegal recording. And it was illegal, Isaiah admitted. Recording without consent in Montana is prohibited. I looked it up. Jackson looked at him with new respect, a music professor who knows surveillance laws. In the safe apartment provided by Alexandra, Isaiah spent his nights meticulously compiling documents and messages. Lucia Morales, the Whitfield's former housekeeper who had quit after witnessing the assault, helped by looking after Zara while Isaiah built his case. They think I'm defeated, Isaiah said one night. They believe I'm just a man without resources, that I'll collapse when they offer me money to give up my daughter. Alexandra noticed the gradual transformation in Isaiah. The fragile man she had rescued was giving way to a calculated strength. What are you planning? She asked, watching him organize documents. Isaiah looked up, his gaze now steady. Margaret always said I wasn't sophisticated enough to be connected to the Whitfields. Well, I'll show them exactly what a low-class music professor can do. At the Whitfield estate, Margaret was serving drinks to Montana's social elite. That man is clearly mentally ill. Zara will be where she belongs in a matter of weeks. Robert proudly displayed a photo of Zara, an image used to create the illusion of a loving family concerned about their granddaughter. What they didn't realize was that at that very moment, Isaiah was contacting dozens of people who had been wronged by the Whitfields over the years. Silenced former employees, betrayed business partners, mistreated workers, people whose stories combined with Isaiah's evidence would form a perfect storm. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon against arrogance isn't money or power, but the quiet patience of someone who has survived by watching closely. While the Whitfields celebrated their impending victory, their every move was being documented by a growing network of allies united for justice. Imagine their surprise, Isaiah whispered to the sleeping Zara, when they discovered that the same man they left to die in the blizzard not only survived, but learned to thrive in the harshest of conditions. Just like the Montana pines that appear fragile but hold unimaginable strength beneath the snow. The day of the preliminary hearing arrived like storm clouds gathering at the Gallatin County Courthouse. The main hall was filled with curious faces, local reporters, idle lawyers, and citizens drawn by rumors that the powerful Whitfields would face an unexpected challenge. Margaret and Robert Whitfield entered with the confidence of people who had never lost a battle. Margaret, impeccable in her burgundy suit, discreetly greeted Judge William Thornton, an old friend of her family for 3 generations. When Isaiah entered, accompanied by Jackson and Alexandra, Margaret leaned toward Victoria Palmer with a scornful smile. Look at him, still trying to look respectable. Judge Thornton banged his gavel. We are here to consider the petition for temporary custody of Zara Johnson filed by Mr. and Mrs. Whitfield. Victoria Palmer rose, flashing a rehearsed smile. Your Honor, my clients are upstanding citizens concerned for the welfare of their granddaughter. Mr. Johnson has demonstrated emotional instability and an inability to provide a safe environment for the child. Jackson Rivera remained seated, calmly leafing through his documents. His apparent nonchalance made Margaret frown. My clients request immediate temporary custody while psychological evaluations are conducted, Palmer concluded, handing documents to the judge. Attorney Rivera, the judge called, do you wish to respond? Jackson rose slowly. Actually, Your Honor, I will not respond today. Instead, I would like to offer a proposal. A murmur rippled through the room. Margaret leaned toward her husband, confused. My client is willing to consent to supervised visits with Zara by the Whitfields, Jackson continued, provided that before that, we watch a short video together. Victoria Palmer stood up indignantly. Your Honor, that's irregular. We're here to discuss custody, not movie screenings. Judge Thornton hesitated, but his curiosity prevailed. What video would that be, counsel? A brief documentary about the events leading up to the current situation, Jackson replied calmly. I believe it will clarify many disputed facts. Reluctantly, the judge granted permission. The lights dimmed, and a screen descended from the side wall of the courtroom. The first image froze Margaret Whitfield in place. It was security camera footage from the Whitfield estate itself, showing Isaiah being pushed down the stairs by Robert while Margaret screamed, "Take this man and his half-breed where no one can find them." The video continued relentlessly, recording conversations about plans to eliminate the problem, emails exchanged with Attorney Palmer discussing the falsification of psychological evaluations, and documents showing how they tried to alter Rebecca's will after her death. The final piece of the video was devastating. Zara, recovered from her injuries, calmly recounting what she had witnessed. Grandma Margaret said, Daddy didn't deserve to live. Grandpa Robert hit Daddy when he tried to protect me. The lights came up. Margaret was pale as a ghost. Robert stared at the floor, and Victoria Palmer loosened her collar, visibly shaken. Your Honor, Jackson resumed, we would like to file formal criminal charges against Margaret and Robert Whitfield for attempted murder, assault, falsification of documents, and obstruction of justice. Judge Thornton, now visibly shaken, adjusted his glasses. Miss Palmer, do your clients have anything to say? Palmer was speechless. Margaret tried to stand, but her legs gave way. Robert finally spoke. It's all lies. Digital manipulation. That's when the back door opened and Lucia Morales entered, followed by 3 former Whitfield employees. I witnessed everything, Your Honor. Lucia declared with dignity, and I'm not alone. In less than an hour, Margaret and Robert Whitfield were escorted out of the courtroom in police custody. Reporters flashed cameras capturing the fall of the untouchables of Bozeman. In the silent hallway, Isaiah remained seated, trembling slightly. Alexandra sat down beside him, not touching him, just offering her presence. How did we pull this off? He asked quietly. We didn't. Alexandra replied, You did. Your courage in recording everything, your intelligence in putting this case together. I just provided the resources. You built the strategy. In Judge Thornton's private office, an investigation was already underway into his connection to the Whitfields. At the police station, Victoria Palmer was negotiating her own immunity in exchange for information about the Whitfields' previous crimes, including the truth about the accident that had killed Rebecca. The entire town was now talking about how a black music teacher, whom everyone believed had no chance against a century-old Montana dynasty, had not only survived but exposed decades of corruption, prejudice, and covered-up crimes. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, Zara played with other children, oblivious to the storm that had just passed. Her crystal-clear laughter echoed through the air as if the shadows had finally been banished from her life. You know what's most impressive, Alexandra commented. Watching you. At no point did you act out of revenge, only out of justice, out of protection. Isaiah looked at his daughter playing and then at the headlines already circulating on the cell phones around him. Whitfield dynasty crumbles. Attempted murder exposed by single father. There are two kinds of people in this world, he replied softly. Those who believe that power means crushing others, and those who understand that true strength is remaining whole even when they try to destroy you. On the Bozeman skyline, the silhouettes of mountains glowed against the setting sun as a new order began to take shape. The powerful and untouchable now looked around nervously, wondering who else held secrets like Isaiah, who else had been silenced and was about to find their voice. At the center of this transformation was a man who, when left for dead in the freezing Montana wilderness, not only survived, but learned to use that same resilience to illuminate truths that many would rather keep in the shadows. 2 years have passed since that day in court that changed everything. The estate that once belonged to the Whitfields now serves as a support center for victims of domestic violence and discrimination. Isaiah, dressed in a simple but elegant sweater, led a group of volunteer counselors through the hallways where he once walked in fear. You can be sure, he explained, that when these families come to us, they've already heard no from at least 5 different institutions. Our mission is not only to offer shelter and legal assistance, but to give them back something the world has tried to steal from them: dignity. In Robert Whitfield's former study, now converted into a music therapy room, 9-year-old Zara helped other children express their emotions through simple instruments. Her talent for music and empathy had blossomed in her new school environment, free from the burden of being the Whitfield granddaughter. Now, she was simply the daughter of Isaiah Johnson, the man who had turned personal tragedy into social revolution. Margaret Whitfield was serving her 3rd year in prison for attempted murder and conspiracy. The walls of her 3-square-meter cell were decorated only with newspaper clippings about the case that had landed her there, an unhealthy obsession that her psychiatrists classified as a pathological inability to accept her own guilt. Robert, sentenced to 5 years, had aged decades in a few months as his health deteriorated without the privileges he was accustomed to. In the main conference room, Alexandra Sinclair signed documents alongside Jackson Rivera. The Johnson Sinclair Foundation had just acquired its 10th property, another one that would be converted into a support center for marginalized communities. I believe we're ready to expand to Seattle next month, Alexandra said, her face more relaxed than anyone had ever seen it before she met Isaiah. Lucia Morales, now the Foundation's chief operating officer, walked in smiling. NPR just confirmed they'll be here on Thursday for their special series, Transformative Justice. They want to interview you, Isaiah. Isaiah's transformation wasn't limited to his work. The man who once walked with his head down was now invited to speak at universities across the country. His story inspired legislation on domestic violence and discrimination in 4 different states. You know what impresses me the most? Jackson remarked one afternoon as they watched Zara teaching a new child how to play the piano. It's not just what you've achieved, but how you've done it without losing your humanity. Isaiah smiled, watching his daughter. I've learned that justice isn't about destroying your enemies, but about rebuilding what they tried to tear down even stronger. Across town, Victoria Palmer, the Whitfield's former lawyer, now taught legal ethics at Montana State University, part of her alternative sentence after cooperating with the investigation. Her lectures always began with the same sentence. I learned the hard way that the line between representing a client and becoming an accomplice is thinner than we think. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Alexandra and Isaiah walked through the gardens of the center discussing plans for expansion. Their relationship had developed organically, first as allies, then friends, and finally as partners in every sense of the word. You turned tragedy into purpose, Alexandra observed. Do you know how many lives have been changed because you decided to fight instead of accepting what they did to you? Isaiah paused, reflecting. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped on that road. You would have found another way, Alexandra replied with conviction. People like you always do. That evening, a letter arrived at the center. The postmark indicated the Montana State Penitentiary. It was from Margaret Whitfield. I hope she would beg for forgiveness, Isaiah said after reading the letter filled with bitter accusations. But some people would rather drown in hatred than admit their mistakes. "And what are you going to do about it?" Alexandra asked. Isaiah folded the letter and placed it in a folder. "Use it in my psychology workshops to demonstrate how privilege distorts one's perception of reality. She still thinks I set her up, that I manipulated the system, unable to accept that the system that always favored her finally worked as it should." From the window, they could see Zara teaching a new boy how to play a simple melody. Her patience and kindness were clear reflections of the values Isaiah had preserved even in the darkest moments. "You know what the real victory is?" Isaiah smiled, watching his daughter. "It's not seeing the Whitfields pay for their crimes. It's knowing that Zara will grow up without carrying the weight of the hatred they tried to plant in her." On the walls of the center, photos of dozens of families who had passed through there told silent stories of transformation. In each one, you could see the same look Isaiah now wore, not of someone who had simply survived, but of someone who had found purpose in their pain. "They say the best revenge is to live well," Isaiah concluded, accompanying Alexandra to the garden. "But I've discovered something even better, using your experience to ensure that others don't go through the same suffering. That's not just living well, it's creating meaning." As the sun set over the building that had once symbolized oppression and prejudice, it now cast a warm glow of hope. One thing was certain: sometimes our greatest strength lies not in what we achieve, but in what we choose to build from the ruins they tried to leave us.